Hi, this is Prayos and I'm a professional gambler. Today we will discuss how to beat low stakes and we will listen to a recording of Phil Galfond. Thank you for that. And yeah, I also thought about the topic 5 minutes before starting the stream. And this were my top 5, which I came up with in order to beat low stakes. I think that it is about fundamentals most of the time. So you have to know the fundamental theories like pot to stack ratio, play tight aggressive, and yeah, outs and odds. And if you stick to these things and have it deal down very well, you probably will be a winner. So my first point was you should definitely play tight aggressive, as most people are to lose, and you punish them most effectively by playing tight. You basically want to do the opposite what your table is doing. And if you are at a table where everyone is tight aggressive, you're probably at the wrong table and should change to another table anyways. The second point I came up with was it's often not that hard to beat the players, but it's often insanely hard to beat the rake. The lower you go in stakes, the higher the rake, and often it can be quite challenging to beat it. I mean, on microstacks, on like 1 cent, 2 cents or something, you pay basically 5% off the pot in every hand. And yeah, the players have to be quite bad in order to beat this high percentage of rake. So again, even on these stakes, table selection is important. This is the third point. I also think I already talked about that briefly before. So if the table is not good, if you don't have loose players, bad players who obviously make bad decisions, which you will recognize at Showdown, or if someone is in every hand, he's obviously often doing something wrong. If you don't recognize a player like that, go to another table, especially on lower stakes. Often you have 10, 11, 12, a lot of games running at the same time. No reason to play at the worst one. And the fourth point I came up with, your opponents often have big leagues. And you have to pay attention. I mean, you should always pay attention what your opponents are doing. But here it's even more important as the leagues are bigger and you want to find out what they are and then you want to exploit them. And the fifth point I came up with, I mean, I actually did not have a very good fifth point, but I think this one makes sense. You should get Hold'em Manager, at least if your poker sites allows it, as this will allow you to not pay that close attention, or let's phrase it this way. You will have a heads-up display and see all the stats. So VPIP, how many hands is a player playing? His pre-flop raise percentage, his 3-bet percentage, and many more stats. And these will be way more accurate than you could guess when you just paying attention. And you also, if you played someone like, 30 days ago, it will still be in your database and you would not need to remember, but the stats would show you. So this is something I can really recommend. It's also not that expensive. Yeah, below in the description, I also have a link to it. Other things like PLO Vision and PLO Trainer are not that important yet, because people are not playing GTO or are not that GTO savvy. And this should be mostly about exploiting leagues and not about playing GTO. But still, it does make sense if you want to move up in stakes eventually to learn about GTO later. And I have also links to these programs there. And yeah, let's continue and see what Phil Galfond has to say about this topic.
All right, Phil, it's another top 5. Once again, I'm about to say something. You've never heard it before. Let's see what you can make out of it. Today's top 5 is top 5 low stakes hacks.
Okay. Top 5 low stakes hacks. So I'm not going to refer to them as hacks, but I'll just call them tips for adjusting to low stakes poker, which is essentially, playing with weaker opposition. So generally, the lower the stakes you go, the easier the competition is, the more mistakes they make, and typically they make them in similar kinds of ways. So
yeah, that's obviously true. Often it is also, if people play for like a buy-in of $5 or $10, they might not care about the money at all and just be very spewy and just giving it away basically. And this happens less and less frequently the higher you go up in stakes. So yeah, if you have such a dude on your table, it's obviously massively plus UV, and you want to be at these tables and not at the tables with the tight aggressive guys. So table selection, as already mentioned.
Number 1, play tight pre-flop. It's super boring.
Yeah, also, I made this point also. And yeah, I think generally, when you play poker, it's about making money, and you should be on loose aggressive or loose passive tables. So in general, it will always be boring because you will have to play tight to counter this style.
Way to adjust, but it's an important one. People generally at lower stakes are too loose. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, they're playing such bad hands. That means I can play a bunch of bad hands too, because on average, like I'm going up against weaker hands.
Yeah, but then you make the same mistakes as they do. And yeah, then you play with trash against trash. And it's unclear who will end up winning. But if you come up with better quality hands on average in the hand, you will also have better hands on average and crush them. I mean, if you make top pair, top kicker, and a lot of action is going on, it will be tough. And you don't know what to do. And you might make very expensive mistakes. But if you come up with, if you have a better hand selection pre-flop, you will have good top pairs always, and the decisions are a lot easier.
And while it's technically true in some spots, it's slippery slope. And especially when you're in multi-way pots, bad hands do not do well. The way that you're...
Yeah, and that's the point. People are too loose. And many people at the table will be too loose. And yeah, then it's, as he said, a slippery slope. Because yeah, the more people see the flop, the less valuable is this bad hand, like whatever, 8-3 suited. You basically, top pair's worth nothing. I mean, it could be worth something against one opponent, but if you see the flop multi-way all the time, these hands don't do well. Also, if you have a flush draw, I mean, someone can easily have a higher one, so play tight.
You're going to beat them playing bad hands is to actually have good hands when you enter the pot. A lot of people never think of this, and it's actually kind of obvious when you think about it. So apologies for some of you who this is obvious for. But let's say we were playing poker, 9 people around a table. And, you know, normally, like, let's say that it's $1, $2 blinds, and we'll have $300 in our stack or something. Let's say instead of that, we just take out the blinds. So there are no blinds. We all have $300 in front of us, and the betting just starts on one person. And their option is they can put in, you know, $2, or they can raise to more, or they can fold. What hands should you play? And the answer is actually you should only play aces, because if you only play aces and you go all in, once anybody's raised, you go all in with aces, you can never lose because you're never forced to put in money unless you're going all in with the best hand. So really the reason we play hands is all about the blinds. And when people are playing a bunch of hands, it costs.
Yeah, true. Poker basically is a battle for the blinds. If no blinds would be involved, the game would be pointless, and there would be no reason to play any hands other than the nuts.
Cost you so little in comparison to the size of the pots to just wait for better hands and enter the pot with better hands. So that's hack tip. Number 1 is play tight, play good hands. Number 2 is fast play your good hands. So a lot of people love to, you know, raise, call.
That's also something I think makes a lot of sense, especially on lower stakes. Balancing is not that important than on higher stakes. And you generally, when you have a good hand, you want to build the pot. People are too loose anyways, and they will call with way weaker hands. And yeah, but most of them will be passive. And if you slow play, there often you will end up with a smaller pot in the end than you would be if you would just be aggressive from the beginning. I mean, people could see through this very easily, but usually they won't because they are too bad of a player and don't pay enough attention, or might be drunk or whatever. But yeah, in general, fast play is the way to go. At least it was when I was playing these low stakes. There are only very few exceptions when you have these crazy maniacs who go wild every hand and try to bluff you off all the time. Then it might be time to sometimes slow play, but other than that, always fast play. Or not always, but yeah, against most of these typical opponents you would face.
Call. We have pocket sevens on the button. We call. 5-way to the flop of queen 7-4 with 2 spades. Bet, call. A lot of people like to just call and disguise the strength of their hand and hope that somebody keeps.
Yeah, I think that's not a good idea because, yeah, people can really easily outdraw you. The flush draws are out there. And if people have top pair, they will probably not let go. And you don't want to give too many free cards. I mean, this board isn't even that drawy. We could have found an even worse example when it's like queen 10-7 or something, where a lot of straights can come in. And you want to protect your hands first, and second, you want to build a pot and extract value. And when it's multi-way against loose passive opponents, the most RCV line is just to raise it.
Betting into them because it feels really good to be tricky and to just call and have them like.
By the way, I never had this feeling. I mean, if you play on higher stakes, you often have to disguise your hand and slow play stuff. But I always feel like such a dumb idiot if I slow play and then a card comes that changes the board. So for me, it's like the opposite feeling. I mean, he says it feels so good to slow play, but for me, it's always the opposite. I want to fast play always, and I have to stop myself to not do it.
Bluff off their stack to you, or have them bet turn with kings and then jam river with kings, and you say, haha, I have a set, gotcha. You don't literally, I hope you don't literally say that, but in your head you do. The thing is,
the same result, you would probably get the exact same result if you just raise flop, and he would probably go all in and think, oh yeah, he's on a flush draw, I have to put all the money in, or he has top pair, kings. I beat him by so much, so I have to get it in. So yeah, definitely, it would be the same result. But if your opponent might have a worse hand, like queen with a weak kicker or something, you might just not be able to build such a huge pot that you would be able to do when you just take the aggressive line. And they probably will not go away anyway, so they will be like, oh, he might have a flush draw, okay, he might be bluffing, whatever. I have top pair, can't get away from my hand, have to call. It's just a cooler. But that's the thinking of these guys. I mean, they play so many trashy hands, and if they find top pair, they can't let go.
At lower stakes, people are generally too passive. They're not bluffing enough. They're not putting in enough money with thin enough value hands. But they are also too loose. They're chasing draws too often. They're really stubborn. They don't want to fold top pair.
True.
So raise that flop. Get them to put in more money right then with Queen Jack.
By the way, I'm not even sure if these guidelines are still true. I did not play poker lately, and I also did not play lower stakes. But I assume it still is the way as it used to be when I played these stakes. Or it will definitely be the case when you play live.
Before the turn brings a straight or a flush and scares them off the hand.
In this case, my last point, getting Hold'em Manager obviously don't work with the heads-up display. But yeah, in general, you talk about online poker, but most of the things are also true for live or even more.
Hand. Or even if it doesn't scare them off the hand, then you've made the pot bigger, and now you can bet again on the turn. You can bet again on the river and get their whole stack. So just make sure you fast play your good hands, unless you have a really good reason not to. Number 3, figure out when people have to have a made hand. And so what I mean by that is you raise in early position, the button calls, the big blind calls. The flop is king 7-3 rainbow. Check. You bet half pot. The button calls and the big blind folds. Most players, when they call there on king 7-3 rainbow, unless they specifically have like 6-5 suited that they played pre-flop or 6-4 suited or whatever, they have a pair. So find spots where you're pretty sure your opponent has a pair. And then if later in the hand they bet or raise, just fold everything. That doesn't beat, very good hands, because players at low stakes are essentially never turning pairs that could win at showdown into a bluff. And so continuing with the king 7-3 example, let's say King 7.
Not sure if that's true, but yeah, I would say against the general population, which is probably true, but there are rare exceptions, and you should pay attention to know about these so that you play accordingly, more or less. But yeah, also a good tip that on average probably is correct.
3, you bet, they call. Turn is a 6, bringing a flush draw. You check, they bet, you call with whatever, King 10. And then the river is an 8, bringing a flush. You check, they bet. They're just not bluffing. They just can't be bluffing anymore. And they're representing a better hand than you. Obviously, some players can be bluffing, and good players know in position, like they're going to play some hands like 6-5 that way. So they're kind of bluff. They call the flop and then they're bluffing, or like 7-5 suited. They're bluffing the turn, and then everything gets there on the river. And so they just have to bluff with that hand because it's really low in their range. But a lot of low stakes players don't think like that. And they just think that you bluff with no.
Yeah, people also will have showdown value very often and then just take the showdown because they also figure, okay, flush got there. I have to check now because everything beats me. I mean, not everything beats me, but if I bet, I'm beat most likely, and I'm happy to take the free showdown. But I think even lower stakes players might often realize that it makes a lot of sense to bet there if they somehow bricked. Because yeah, it's very scary, obviously.
A pair. And so when they have a pair.
But they probably don't bluff with a pair because they think they have showdown value somehow. But if they got there with complete air somehow, they might bluff.
They just don't bluff. So look for spots where your opponents almost always have a pair and fold everything. Similarly, number 4, look for spots where a lot of draws miss. And then call rivers. Generally, I would say people at low stakes under bluff, but they also call a little bit too loose and chase draws too loose on the flop. So to give you an example, let's say you raise in middle position, the big blind defends, the flop is queen 10-7 with 2 clubs. They check, you bet, they call. Turn is an offsuit 3, check, check. River is an offsuit 4, they bet big. Well, yes, they can have some slow played sets. They can have some slow played 2-pair. They can have some top pair going for value. But there are so many bluffs for them to choose from. Like ace jack, king jack, jack 9, 9-8.
There are like infinite combos of straight, flush draws, or both. So yes, they can find a lot of bluffs in this spot. So yeah, calling makes a lot of sense in this situation.
9-6 suited, 8-6.
By the way, you didn't say what we have, but I assume we have like top pair or middle pair.
6 suited, king 9. I've probably forgotten some already. But then flush draws also. Like they have all of those hands that missed. And people at low stakes know that when you have no pair and you're probably not going to win unless you bet, they find those bluffs. So look for those spots to bluff catch. Lastly, I'd say adjust really, how do I want to put this? Make big adjustments.
Again, to the point before, found this very profitable. I had like top pair or middle pair in this situation, and I was really putting a lot of value bets on. So I was betting big on flop, big on turn, everything misses on the river. I checked with the guy, assuming that he chases enough draws for me to check call profitably, and this often worked out. So that's also a line.
To how many players see the flop. So what I mean by that is if a lot of players see the flop, basically like 5+ players, just don't bluff post flop because
because you're up against so many cards. This is even more true in PLO. And someone will often have something. And bluffing just don't make any sense in these type of games. And also, your hand selection pre-flop, you have to play even tighter. And you have to make sure that your hands often make the nuts. I mean, in PLO, get involved with the ace-high flush draw. Don't get involved with any other flush draw because you can have a very expensive, make a very expensive second best hand, and you don't want that. Play hands that make like the top end of the straight. like whatever, high Broadways, for example, don't have like the 4, 5, 6, 7, but often makes the button end or not the nut straight, because this can also get very expensive, or you can be in very tough spots where you have to figure out what to do with like the third nuts or something.
What happens is you're up against 4 other hands, and 1 or 2 of them probably have something. And what's supposed to happen in theory is that because there are 5 people in the pot, the thresholds for what you need to call down, what you need to bet, what you need to raise, go way up.
But these people don't know about that.
But people don't really adjust in their minds like that. They just see top pair, they see an open ender, they see a flush draw, and they play the way they would play if there were 5 people in the pot or 2 people in the pot. So
yeah, they just make for them. It just doesn't make any difference. They are just like, okay, I have top pair, I have middle pair, whatever. It's good enough, and they don't adjust to if it's like 1 opponent or 5, although they should.
When there are 5 people in the pot, hands are better. Just don't bluff them, like ever. When it's heads up to the flop, now you're only up against 1 hand. They usually don't have much.
Yeah, bluffing goes way up in value if you have less opponents that you have to make fold their hands.
Now you should bluff a lot, play aggressively, because they're also, in their mind, everybody has this, barometer of what a hand is worth. Their barometer is set. It's set for like the average of hands that they see go down. And the average hand has maybe 3 or 4 players in a low stakes game seeing a flop. And so they're used to like folding the flop when they don't have much, even against a small bet. But now in a heads up pot, you need to be defending some pretty weak hands against small bets because both players don't have much pretty often. But they don't do that. So this is the spot where you get very aggressive. And
thanks for the follow.
And find opportunities to bluff whenever you can. So yeah, that list actually came out better than I thought it was going to. So hopefully you found that helpful, and you take those hacks.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are again already at the end of our stream. Yeah, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, it might also be of interest for you to check out my second channel. It's called Finance with Axel. It's about money, cryptocurrency, investing. So if you're interested in that as well, feel free to check it out. It's also linked below. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, follow, share it with your friends, all the good stuff you do on YouTube. Yeah, thanks. Bye. Until next time.